Melania Trump saves Barron from armed attack. What she does next stuns the nation. It was a crisp autumn evening in New York City, the kind of night that promised peace and quiet, at least on the surface. The streets were bustling with their usual energy, taxis honking as they weaved through traffic and pedestrians chatting while huddled in coats against the cool breeze. Barron and Melania Trump stepped out of a sleek black SUV, their breath forming small clouds in the chilly air. They had just attended a high-profile charity event at the Metropolitan Arts Center. The event had gone off without a hitch. Photos taken, hands shaken, donations pledged. Everything had felt smooth, routine even. But something wasn't right. As they walked down the sidewalk, Barron felt a strange unease prick at the back of his neck. He glanced over his shoulder, his sharp eyes catching sight of a black SUV parked farther down the street. It wasn't one of theirs. The engine idled, and though the windows were tinted, he could feel someone watching. "Mom," he said quietly, leaning toward her. "Something feels off." Melania followed his gaze, her face calm but focused. Years of living in the spotlight had given her an almost sixth sense for danger. She gave a subtle nod, tightening her grip on Barron's arm. "We'll head back to the car," she said softly. "Stay close to me." The two turned back toward the SUV, walking at a steady pace. Melania's eyes scanned the street, catching every detail. The man standing too casually near the alley, the glint of something metallic in his hand. Her heart quickened, but her expression remained composed. There wasn't time to panic. "Barron," she whispered, her voice steady but urgent. "When I tell you to run, you run. Do you understand?" Barron's eyes widened. "What? Promise me," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. He nodded slowly, his pulse racing. Then it happened. Two men emerged from the shadows, their faces masked, their movements swift and deliberate. One of them brandished a gun, raising it in their direction. "Stay where you are," the man barked, his voice harsh and commanding. "Hand over the boy and no one gets hurt." Melania's instincts took over in an instant. Without a second thought, she shoved Barron behind her, placing herself squarely between him and the attackers. Her voice was calm but fierce. "You're not taking him." The gunman stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "Move aside. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Melania said, her eyes locked on his. "And I'm telling you, you're making a mistake." For a moment, the gunman hesitated, thrown off by her unwavering confidence. He had expected fear, panic, but not this. Barron crouched behind her, his heart hammering in his chest. Every instinct told him to protect his mom, but he also knew that she had a plan. She always did. The second attacker moved to flank them, his eyes darting toward the nearby security team. The situation was growing more dangerous by the second. Melania glanced to the side, calculating her options. If she could buy just a little more time, reinforcements would arrive. She knew it. "You don't want to do this," she said, her voice low and steady. "There's still time to walk away." The gunman sneered. "Nice try." He raised the gun higher, aiming directly at her. And that's when the chaos erupted. The air seemed to crackle with tension. The street, so lively moments ago, fell eerily silent as people backed away, their faces frozen in shock and fear. The gunman stepped closer, his finger tightening on the trigger. "I won't ask again," he growled. "Move, or this gets ugly." Melania's eyes never left his. She could feel Barron trembling behind her, but her resolve only hardened. There was no way she was going to let anything happen to her son. Time seemed to slow. Every detail burned into her mind, the reflection of the streetlights on the gun's barrel, the way the second attacker was shifting nervously, clearly uncertain about the situation. If she made the wrong move, everything could spiral out of control in an instant. But she wasn't going to make the wrong move. Without breaking eye contact with the gunman, she subtly signaled with her hand, a gesture almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. It was enough for the lead security agent stationed nearby, a former Special Forces operative who had been watching everything unfold. The agent sprang into action, drawing his weapon and shouting, "Drop the gun!" The gunman spun around, caught off guard. For a split second, his attention wavered. It was all the opening Melania needed. She turned and grabbed Barron's arm, pulling him toward the nearest cover, a parked car just a few feet away. "Run," she shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. Barron stumbled but recovered quickly, his long legs carrying him across the street. His heart pounded in his chest as he dove behind the car, gasping for breath. He turned to see his mother still standing tall, her body a shield between him and the attackers. "Mom," he cried, his voice cracking. Melania glanced back at him, her eyes fierce but full of love. "Stay down." The gunman, realizing he was losing control of the situation, raised his weapon again, aiming directly at her. But before he could fire, the lead security agent tackled him to the ground. The second attacker tried to make a run for it, but reinforcements were already closing in. Within seconds, both men were disarmed and restrained. Barron watched in stunned silence as the scene unfolded. Police sirens wailed in the distance, their flashing lights reflecting off the nearby buildings. It was over, but Barron couldn't move. His body felt frozen, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. Melania walked over to him, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. She crouched down beside him, her hands resting gently on his shoulders. "Barron," she said, her voice soft now. "It's okay. You're safe." Barron looked up at her, his eyes wide and filled with tears. "You saved me." Melania smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Of course I did. I always will." For a moment, the world seemed to fade away. All that mattered was that they were together, alive and unbroken. The ride back home was quiet. Barron stared out the window, his reflection staring back at him as the city lights blurred into streaks of color. His hands were still trembling, the adrenaline slowly fading but leaving behind a heavy weight in his chest. Melania sat beside him, her hand resting on his, offering silent reassurance. She knew better than to push him to talk. Barron had always been thoughtful, needing time to process things in his own way. As they pulled into the driveway, Melania turned to him. "Let's go inside, get some rest," she said. Barron nodded wordlessly, following her into the house. The familiar warmth of their home felt like a sanctuary, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. He collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. The silence stretched on for several minutes before he finally spoke. "Why would someone want to hurt us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Melania sat beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "There are people in this world who are filled with anger and hate," she said gently. "Sometimes they lash out at others because they think it will give them power or control. But those people, they're cowards. And they'll never win." Barron nodded slowly, her words sinking in. He wanted to believe that. He needed to believe it. The next day, the news of the attack dominated every headline. Footage from bystanders' phones circulated across social media, showing Melania's calm, decisive actions. Former First Lady Melania Trump saves son in dramatic armed attack. Heroic act. Melania shields Barron Trump from gunmen. Nation praises Melania Trump's courage and quick thinking. Messages of support flooded in from around the world. Politicians, celebrities, and everyday people sent their love and gratitude, praising Melania for her bravery. One tweet stood out to Barron as he scrolled through his phone later that morning. "Strength isn't about power. It's about protecting the ones you love, no matter the cost. Thank you, Melania Trump, for reminding us what true courage looks like." Barron showed the tweet to his mom, who smiled softly. "They're right, you know," he said. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." Melania chuckled, ruffling his hair. "And you're the bravest." Barron leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. Despite everything, he felt lighter somehow. The fear wasn't gone, but it no longer controlled him. In the days that followed, Melania and Barron began to settle back into their routines. But something had changed, something that couldn't be undone. Their bond, already strong, had deepened in ways neither of them could have imagined. Barron found himself reflecting on his mother's words often, thinking about the power of love and courage in the face of fear. He had learned a lesson he would carry with him forever. True strength wasn't about never being afraid. It was about standing tall, even when the world felt like it was falling apart. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of their home, but the warmth it offered felt distant and unreal. Barron sat at the breakfast table, picking at his food while his thoughts remained locked on the events of the night before. Every detail played in his mind like a broken record: the masked men, the gun, his mother's unwavering bravery. He glanced at Melania, who was calmly sipping her tea, her face a perfect mask of serenity. You wouldn't have known she had faced armed attackers just hours ago. It was something Barron admired about her: her strength, her refusal to show fear, even when the world around her seemed to collapse. But Barron knew her well enough to catch the subtle signs of strain: the slight tension in her jaw, the way she held her cup just a little too tightly. She was protecting him, as she always did, but she was carrying her own burden. "Mom," Barron said softly. "Are you okay?" Melania set her cup down, meeting his eyes. "I'm fine," she said with a small smile. "But the real question is, how are you?" Barron hesitated, unsure how to answer. He wanted to say he was fine too, that everything was okay, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, he shook his head. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I keep thinking about what could have happened if you hadn't been there. What if you hadn't seen them in time? What if—" Melania leaned across the table, taking his hand in hers. "No what ifs," she said firmly. "We're safe now. That's all that matters." "But it could happen again," Barron said, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do we know we'll always be safe?" "We don't," Melania admitted. "But we can't live in fear, Barron. Life is full of risks. The important thing is that we face them together, with strength and courage. And we'll always protect each other." Barron nodded slowly, her words sinking in. He knew she was right, but the fear still lingered, a shadow he couldn't quite shake. Meanwhile, the news coverage of the attack intensified. Every major network ran segments on the incident, dissecting every detail. Pundits praised Melania's quick thinking and bravery, while security experts debated the broader implications of such a high-profile attack. Social media was flooded with hashtags like #MelaniaTheHero and #ProtectBarron, with people from all walks of life offering their support. One video in particular went viral, a shaky cell phone recording that captured the exact moment Melania shielded Barron, refusing to back down even with a gun pointed at her. The video had millions of views within hours, and the comments were filled with admiration and awe. "I've always respected Melania Trump, but this is next-level courage," one comment read. "She didn't even flinch," another said. "That's a mother's love right there." Barron scrolled through the comments, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Pride swelled in his chest, but so did a deeper understanding of just how close they had come to tragedy. Later that afternoon, Chief Reynolds paid them a visit. His face was serious as he sat down in the living room, a thick file in his hands. "We've made progress in the investigation," he began, glancing between Melania and Barron. "Both suspects are in custody. They're refusing to cooperate, but we've already found enough evidence to charge them with multiple felonies. They won't be a threat to anyone for a very long time." Melania nodded, her expression calm. "Thank you, Chief." "There's more," Reynolds said, his tone growing darker. "It looks like this attack wasn't random. The suspects were part of a small extremist group. They've been targeting high-profile figures they believe represent, well, everything they hate about modern society." Barron's stomach churned. The idea that someone had targeted his family simply because of who they were felt surreal and terrifying. Reynolds continued, "We're coordinating with federal authorities to ensure you both have the best protection moving forward. And if you ever feel unsafe, you let us know immediately." Melania nodded again, her hand resting protectively on Barron's shoulder. "We'll be careful." After Reynolds left, Barron sat quietly for a long time, his mind racing. "This isn't over, is it?" he finally said. Melania looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and resolve. "No," she admitted. "But that doesn't mean we can't move forward. We just have to be smart, stay strong, and trust the people around us." A few days later, Melania received a call from a close friend at a major news network. They wanted her to give an exclusive interview about the attack, something that would allow her to share her side of the story and offer a message of hope to others. At first, Melania hesitated. She had never been one to seek the spotlight, preferring to focus on her family and personal projects. But this felt different. This wasn't about fame or politics. It was about sending a message of resilience and unity in the face of fear. Barron encouraged her. "You should do it, Mom," he said. "People need to hear your story. It could help a lot of people." Melania agreed. The interview was scheduled for prime time, and it quickly became one of the most highly anticipated broadcasts of the year. On the night of the interview, the living room was transformed into a makeshift studio. Bright lights were set up, and a team of producers and cameramen milled around, preparing for the live broadcast. Barron watched from the sidelines as his mother sat across from the anchor, her posture poised but relaxed. The camera zoomed in, and the anchor began. "Melania, first of all, thank you for being here tonight. I think I speak for everyone when I say that your actions during the attack were nothing short of heroic. Can you tell us what was going through your mind in that moment?" Melania nodded, her eyes calm but reflective. "In that moment, all I could think about was protecting my son. There was no time for fear or hesitation. My only focus was keeping him safe, no matter what it took." The anchor leaned forward. "And how have you and Barron been coping since the attack?" "It's been difficult," Melania admitted. "But we've found strength in each other. We've learned that true courage isn't about being fearless. It's about facing your fears and refusing to let them control you." The interview continued, touching on everything from the investigation to the overwhelming public response. Melania ended with a message of hope and unity, encouraging others to stand strong in the face of adversity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Viewers flooded social media with messages of support, sharing clips from the interview and praising Melania's grace under pressure. Back at home, Barron sat with his mom, watching the news recap the interview. He leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. "You were amazing," he said. Melania chuckled, ruffling his hair. "I had a good reason to be brave." Barron felt a warmth spread through his chest, the lingering fear finally giving way to something stronger: pride, gratitude, and an unshakable bond with the woman who had always been his protector. The days after the interview were a whirlwind. News channels played excerpts on a loop, highlighting Melania's calm and composed demeanor. Social media exploded with renewed admiration, and public figures from every corner of society chimed in with messages of respect and gratitude. But for Barron, life still felt far from normal. Even as the attention poured in, a quiet tension lingered beneath the surface. Every sudden noise made him flinch, and every unfamiliar face in public set his heart racing. He hated the way it made him feel, paranoid, constantly on edge. He had always felt protected, untouchable even, growing up in the public eye. But now, that sense of security had been stripped away. Melania noticed, of course. She always did. One afternoon, as they sat together in the living room, she gently broached the topic. "Barron, I know this hasn't been easy," she said softly. "You've been so strong, but you don't have to carry this on your own." Barron hesitated, staring at his hands. I don't feel like myself anymore," he admitted. "I keep thinking about what happened, and I can't stop wondering if it'll happen again." Melania reached for his hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "That's completely normal," she said. "What we went through was traumatic. It's going to take time to heal. But we're in this together, and we'll get through it, just like we always do." Barron nodded, comforted by her words, but the unease still lingered. Later that evening, as he lay in bed, Barron scrolled through his phone, reading the flood of messages that had poured in after the interview. Most of them were positive. People sharing their own stories of resilience and thanking him and his mother for being so open. One message caught his attention. It was from a boy named Ryan, who had experienced something similar when his family was caught in a violent robbery. "Hey Barron," the message began. "I saw your mom's interview, and I just wanted to say thank you. I've been dealing with the same fears since something happened to my family last year. Seeing you and your mom talk about it made me feel less alone. It gave me hope." Barron reread the message several times, something in him stirring. He had spent so much time feeling trapped by what had happened, but maybe there was a way to turn it into something positive, something that could help others like Ryan. He sat up, his mind racing with ideas. The next morning, Barron joined his mother at breakfast with a determined look on his face. "Mom, I've been thinking," he said, setting his phone on the table. "What if we do something to help other kids who've gone through things like this? Like a support network or a program where they can share their stories and connect with each other." Melania's eyes lit up. "That's a wonderful idea," she said. "It could make a real difference for a lot of people." Encouraged by her response, Barron spent the next few days researching and brainstorming. With the help of Melania and a few trusted advisors, they began laying the groundwork for what would eventually become the Courage Network, a platform dedicated to helping young people cope with trauma and build resilience. The launch of the Courage Network was met with overwhelming support. News outlets praised Barron's initiative, and dozens of schools and community organizations expressed interest in partnering with the program. On the day of the official launch event, Barron stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces in the audience. His heart pounded in his chest, but this time it wasn't fear, it was excitement, determination. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice steady. "When my mom and I went through what we did, it was one of the scariest moments of my life. For a long time, I felt alone, like no one else could understand what I was feeling. But then I realized something important. There are so many others out there who've been through similar experiences. And we're stronger when we come together." He paused, taking a deep breath. The Courage Network is about building that community, about giving people a place to share their stories and support each other. It's about finding strength in our struggles and refusing to let fear control us. The audience erupted into applause, their support washing over Barron like a wave. As he stepped down from the podium, Melania hugged him tightly, pride radiating from her. "You've grown so much," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your strength, your heart, it inspires me every day." Barron smiled, feeling a warmth that pushed the shadows of fear even farther away. For the first time since the attack, he felt truly free. Over the following months, the Courage Network grew rapidly. Testimonials poured in from kids and families who found solace and connection through the program. Barron became a spokesperson for resilience, speaking at schools and events across the country. But through it all, he remained grounded, always returning home to the steady presence of his mom, the woman who had shown him what true courage looked like. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Barron turned to Melania. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked quietly. Melania nodded, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I don't dwell on it. It's part of our story, but it's not the whole story. What matters is how we chose to move forward." Barron leaned back, a peaceful smile on his face. "I think we did okay." Melania chuckled, ruffling his hair. "I think we did more than okay." The sunset cast a golden glow over the city, wrapping them in its warmth. And as the stars began to appear, Barron felt a deep sense of peace. Their journey had been full of twists and turns, but through it all, they had grown stronger together.